of possibly my new favorite book, Enough Trudeau.
Thank you. Yeah, I just published that book late January. For those who ask, yes, I'm related. First cousin, 13 removed. So we meet, our ancestry meets in 1667 in Montreal. So this is where as close as I am to him. So I was raised, like my accent tells, I was raised in Montreal in a French family. My dad is a PR guy, probably was one of the best in Quebec. Still today, he's turning 80, he still writes speeches. He wrote speeches for probably all the Premier of Quebec, a lot of Prime Minister of Canada, including Trudeau. And that's why I live out west and he stays out east. But I was raised in backroom politics. I was raised like one of my fond memory when I was 4 years old, holding my dad by the hand at the Montreal Olympics with all the flags in the back as he was talking to René Lévesque, who became a premier a few months after. My dad wrote 6 of the 12 white books that Quebec still have. So white books in our legislature is very interesting because white books give long-term visions on policies. And one book remained sitting in the legislature it's not dependent on the party. So Quebec still run on the 12 white books of 1979 because they've never been replaced. So whether government is in place, this is the vision for the province. What is the vision for the province of Quebec? Well, it started very, very early. It started basically, we have to remember that this country has been French longer than English. When the English came and won at the Plain of Abraham in 1753 on September 13, the French has been there for 250 years. The French colonies were spreading down the Mississippi River down to New Orleans. In fact, one of the first mayor of New Orleans was the Trudeau, was the third son of the one I'm from originally. So when the English came, and there was a lot of brawl on the south of the border, they start offering land to Americans who wanted to stay loyal to the king. And they start offering farms that have been farmed for over 200 years by French people. So what do you think happened? Do you think the French just opened the door, yes, take our farm? No, they didn't. That brought in 1837 to a rebellion of the French named the Patriots. The rebellion of the Patriots against the English. And then 12 of the generals of the Patriots, of the leader, had been hung. 100 were sent to Australia, deported. And then a deal was made roughly with the Catholic Church, where the English told them, let us build business and take care of your Frenchies there, keep them quiet. That led in 1900, the life expectancy of a French Canadian in Montreal was 19 years old because they were working for the English in textile manufacture, and often a machine could get clogged, so they have a bunch of kids to go and unclog the machine, and when the machine was unclogged, sometimes the brake was not on the machine. So they were providing lodging for the French Canadians. So the rule of the English for the French Canadian was working in the textiles mill was it was maximum 8 per 400 square feet of living space. So very generous employers. So all that created a lot. If you think that Alberta has grievance, I mean, wait until you hear the Quebecers. You know, like it was spread until the 50s. The first rebellion started in Quebec. The first independence movement for sovereignty started in the 50s by taking over their taxation. So in 1957, Quebec started collecting its own tax, which is step one. If you want to be an adult, if you want to be treated like an adult, well, take care of your money. So Quebec started collecting their income tax in 1957. Followed by 1965, the generous federal government offered a pension, the CPP. Well, Quebec decided not to join the CPP because they say, we're going to take care of our money. And they created la Caisse de dépôt. They created two structures, in fact. La Caisse de dépôt for investment, and what is called today Investissement Québec, which is a slush fund for the politicians, the way they can play with. Okay, and so that way they don't touch la Caisse de dépôt, because they have another sandbox of 10 billion decided that they can do whatever they want for political reason. So if you look 60 years later, right now the CPP Investment Fund is proudly announcing that they're managing 700 billion of investment fund for 22 million Canadian. Meanwhile, la Caisse de dépôt in Quebec is managing 500 billion for 6 million insured, 3 times more performant. Not only that, but within la Caisse de dépôt, they said we need to keep the money here, including Canada. So right now, I can tell you that the pension fund of the Quebecers owns more commercial real estate in Alberta than the Alberta government. If you go to the Cross Island Mill, just north of here, this is the Quebec Pension Fund. If you go to Edmonton, to the outlet at the airport, this is the Quebec Pension Fund. If you go to the Southgate Mall in Edmonton, this is the Quebec Pension Fund. So the Quebec Pension Fund invested over 70 billion in real estate across Canada. And then they use it to do their own projects without asking permission. And that developed a very interesting political culture in Quebec. Because in Quebec, if I go now personally, I started doing politics, I was 14 years old. And then at 18, I got very involved in the charlatan negotiation. I was part of the Young Liberal, because when you're conservative in Quebec, you're a liberal, because there's no conservative. And then we left when Robert Bourassa, the premier, voted against, used his veto against our vote. We were against the charlatan accord. So then I campaigned for the referendum of charlatan for the no. And then in '94, we started a political party named the ADQ, and we won 7% of all the votes at the '94 election. And that 7%, what was Parizeau was missing to get his yes. Because in Quebec, you know what? The other very weird stuff is that they understand the Westminster system, and they understand that political parties have programs, and they're not ruling for everyone. They're ruling for their members. So when a politician in Quebec says, it is in my program, they do it. So Parizeau said, we will do a referendum within the first year. So what did he do? He did it. And then he needed that 7% that we held in our parties. So we were invited at the negotiation table, and the question of 1995 was drafted for the first time on my computer. So I was 22 years old, our leader was 24, and we were brought in these negotiations with Parizeau and Bouchard and all that, and they needed us. So they helped us. Following that, I kept on doing politics until I became Christian in 2003. And then I stopped until Harper came in power, where I went back in politics at the federal level as assistant of Mr. Jean-Pierre Blackburn of Canada Economic Development, where that ministry is Canada Economic Development for the region of Quebec. And what does that ministry does? It sprinkled, at the time, 4.3 billion in grants to Quebec. So that was what I managed for over a year, so I saw firsthand how the relationship works. And I will tell you something. The day that the same day that Danielle Smith passed the Bill 1 on sovereignty within United Canada, she also passed Bill 2, who added conditions to get out of the CPP. So the message she sent to Ottawa, say, you know what, we can bark, look, sovereignty within United Canada, but don't worry, we keep on managing our money. We cannot be sovereign if we do not manage our money. That's steps 1. We need to take back our money. Then after that, my book here speaks basically how we can assert our right. So, my name is Trudeau, and I'm not a separatist. Because my stance is that we don't need to separate if we just start asserting our right in this province. Quebec has 38 embassies around the world. When Quebec travel around the world, when the Quebecers travel around the world, they don't go to the Canadian embassy, they go to the Quebec embassy. They have embassies in Paris, New York, London, Washington, Tokyo, 38 around the world. Quebec has its own seat, not under Canada, its own seat at the UN for the UNESCO. So, and all that within the Constitution. The day that we adopted sovereign Alberta within United Canada, that same day Quebec voted in their legislature to not having to pledge allegiance to the King anymore for their members. Then after that, what they did, they passed another legislature saying that for now on, the Lieutenant Governor is a clerk. And then what they've done, they put a for sale sign in front of the residence of the Lieutenant Governor in Quebec. And then they said, well, you know what, if you want to keep that person here, pay for it. We'll stop paying it. We won't cover the fees anymore. We believe that when we vote something at the Quebec Assemblée Nationale, it's law. We don't need anybody to have a royal assent or anything else. So it's all a question of attitude. Quebec chose its immigration. My sister is Vietnamese. We adopted her in 1981. In 1987, my dad brought the rest of the family in. And when you immigrate to Quebec, you have to go through a 5 days course of what are our value, what are this, and then you have to sign a social contract. In that social contract, it says that you need to learn French. If you don't sign that social contract, go to Toronto. And this is exactly what the father of my sister did. He went to Toronto. Because if you don't sign that social contract, you don't have a driver's license, you don't have health care, you don't have anything. You don't want to obey by our rule, go out. Go outside this province. So my book here speaks about that. But to do that, we have to know who we are. Like what is an Albertan? I consider myself an Albertan. I've been here for almost 20 years now. I met my wife here, born and raised in Edmonton. We have 4 kids, all born at the Greyhounds Hospital in Edmonton. I mean, I'm an Albertan. You know, the day I die, for sure they won't put me in a plane to go bury me in Quebec. You know, like I don't have nothing to do down there. So, but what makes me be able to say that? And I believe we need to define that. So in conclusion, I encourage you, and I think it's super important, that petition is critical for the future of our province. And I say that as a non-separatist. Because it's important to ask the question, to have a discussion, to have a plan. So my book here, what I've done is a very clear plan on how to assert our right within Canada. And that book is relevant if we lose the referendum, because then we need to how to assert our right. It's relevant if we win the referendum, because it gives a path to move forward. And I believe that it starts by just asserting as well our identity. And step 1, collecting our tax. Step 2, stop accepting that the RCMP can pull you over on a country road. Because this is Ottawa. People, like, the first few months I came here, I think I got something like pulled over like 4 or 5 times. Because in Quebec, the RCMP cannot arrest you. They cannot pull you over. So I would see our RCMP car, I wouldn't slow down. And then they were, oh, that's right. Geez, here they give tickets. You know? So we need to move to get away from Ottawa and be bold about it, not apologetic. In Quebec, it's do what you want and ask forgiveness never. So that's my stance.
So in Ben's book, page 196, it says, to govern for everyone is to govern for no one.
Yes.
Remember that. There's also 28 steps to sovereignty within a sovereign Alberta if you actually do your job.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, our next speaker, she is delightful, she's not soft-spoken, and she's going to get right to the point really fast. She might hit me with this hockey stick, so I'm not going to give any more characterization than that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Tanya Clements.
Thank
good there, Max? Yeah. I'm always a little humbled when I speak with some of these guys on this crew because they, first of all, they don't use speaking notes, and that kind of blows my mind. Because to be able to hit all my talking points, I have to have notes and things written out, but they're just a wealth of knowledge, so they've got all up there. And then also they're like the leaders of like freedom across the planet, and authors, and yeah, they've all got books and they write. So it's very humbling to be up here with them, and I come to you just as a farmer, a mom, and a little bit different perspective maybe on it. It's very much the same as everybody here, and I love this province and this flag with everything I've got. This is my flag right here that I fly on my combine every harvest, and it's made it through 2 seasons now, and it still looks pretty darn good, I think. But every harvest, I would walk out to my combine, and I would see that flying above the cab of my combine, and I would see my family working together. One would be running the grain cart, another would be on the other combine, one would be hauling a load in the semi, and in those quiet moments, that's where I felt the most peace. I wasn't thinking about politics or Ottawa. I wasn't thinking about anything but the land, the sky, the work before me, and the people that I love. And that's what freedom feels like to me in my little corner of Alberta. And maybe that's why this matters so much to me. It's because when I look at that field and that flag, I don't just see my farm. I see the Canada that I was raised in, the Canada that I believed existed. And a place like that is where you work hard and you can build something, or a place where your effort meant something, a place where decisions were made close to home and then not handed down from far away. And I still believe in that, even though that freedom feels more fragile than ever. I believe we can still protect it though, and we have this opportunity right here to do so. In this part of Canada called Alberta, we can still save this little piece of Canada. So I'm not here to tell you what to think or necessarily even convince you of anything, but I'm here to ask you a few honest questions that I've had to sit with and wrestle with myself. Because an independence referendum is coming. And when you walk into that voting poll in October and you're about to check that box on your ballot, I want you to fully understand the significance of that X. I hope we all pause in that moment to understand the importance of that moment and the opportunity you have in front of you just by placing that simple little X on a piece of paper. An opportunity that may never present itself ever again. So I hope you spend a moment in that quiet reverence of answering the most important question that Albertans will likely ever face. So here are the 5 questions that I think we should all sit with. First one, when you look honestly at Alberta today, are we better off than we were a generation ago? Not just in how we feel, but in opportunity, affordability, and confidence in the future. And will our next generation be better off than we are? Because I see housing costs exploding and energy bills going up and the price of fuel going crazy. And young families are starting to be very stretched. They're stretched thin. You see it every time you fill your tank, you walk into the grocery store. And this transfer of wealth is not new. From the very, very beginning in 1904, Alberta was never meant to be equal. In 1904, it was Clifford Sifton, who was the federal minister responsible for bringing us into Confederation. He said it openly, and this is his quote, "We desire that the great trade and wealth of the prairies shall go to enrich our people in the East, to build up our factories and our places of work, and in every legitimate way contribute to our prosperity." And that wasn't about Alberta's prosperity. That was about using Alberta as a colony to fund Ontario and Quebec. Second question to consider. At the end of the day, who should decide Alberta's future? Ottawa or the people who live here? Who controls our resources? Who sets our priorities? And then who bears the consequences of those decisions being made? Because right now, policies written thousands of kilometers away are shaping how we heat our homes, fuel our vehicles, run our farms, and operate our businesses. Albertans elect provincial governments, and Ottawa just overrides them. We vote for federal parties, and Ottawa still wins. And history shows that this tension isn't new, because decade after decade, this tension has grown. And probably one of the clearest examples is in 1980, when Marc Lalonde, who was Pierre Trudeau's energy minister, launched the National Energy Program. he admitted their plan was to stop Alberta from becoming the economic powerhouse of this country. His exact words actually were, we couldn't let Alberta become the center of economic power in Canada. So they saw us rising then, and they deliberately cut us down. And they kept cutting. That's what they do. Third question, if Alberta consistently gives more than it receives, how long is that even sustainable? That's not just resentment and anger, that's just math. And the scale of that financial impact is larger than most people realize. The money that we give away for nothing in return is huge. Since 1961, Alberta has sent over $800 billion more to Ottawa than we've ever received back. We've overpaid, and 2 out of every 3 of those dollars go straight to Quebec. And I kind of came up with a little bit of an analogy of that because we throw out the word billions constantly and have like no concept anymore, connection to what that actually means. But imagine if the $28 billion that we overpay every year that doesn't come back to us in the terms of services provided by the federal government, imagine if we had to collect that per person in Alberta. That's about $6,000 for every Albertan in the province that is sent to Ottawa and you get nothing back for. So imagine a semi-truck pulls up to your house one day to collect your $6,000. That means you have to go to your stash of cash, you get your $20 bills and you count out 300 of them and hand them over to the driver. And he puts them in the container in the back. And then he says, oh, wait a minute, your wife or your husband also owes the same. So they count out the same amount. And then he goes to both your kids and collects that same amount. And then he goes to your neighbors, everyone in your community across the entire province, collecting the $6,000 each in $20 bills. At the end of that, he's filled up 56 semi-loads of $20 bills. Every 2 semi-loads is $1 billion. So 56 truckloads of those becomes your 28 billion. And you see them driving away out of Alberta with Albertans' money, and you can wave to them or you can finger them, but half of them are going to go directly to Quebec to give that money over. That seems a little bit wild to me. So every single year we lose that $6,000 per person. It's not directly coming right from your taxes, but that's the average across the province. It works out to $6,000 per Albertan in lost services. On top of that, Ottawa blocks pipelines, kills investment. That's made us lose billions and billions of dollars. So more and more of those truckloads that aren't coming to Alberta. And with the multiplier effect, that's over $1 trillion in lost economic activity. So 1,000 billion. The scope of the money that we're giving away is kind of mind-blowing. So when you start looking at what that could mean, if that money stayed here, the numbers become very hard to ignore. Independent projections show Alberta could, even after replacing all the federal programs and services, have a significant surplus in the scale of $20 to $40 billion a year. That's not a small adjustment. That's a completely different financial position we would be in. And that would allow us to quickly pay off our provincial debt, and then we could grow a heritage fund, much like Norway's oil fund, where the interest one day could largely fund all the activities in our province. Fourth question, and this is the question that weighs on me the most, is what happens if we just do nothing? What if we do nothing and just let ourselves go down with the ship? Because standing still and doing nothing, that's still a decision, and every decision has consequences. Doing nothing doesn't preserve the Alberta we love. It allows it to be slowly replaced. Now, some people ask, can't we just fix this from within Canada? Can't we negotiate a fair deal? Well, friends, Alberta has been trying for over 120 years. We talked about the 1980s with the National Energy Program, where billions were lost and Alberta's future was deliberately stifled. Benoit talked about the 2 constitutional reform attempts, Meech Lake and Charlottetown, in the 1987 to 1992 timeline, and both of those failed. And the reason why they failed is because opening up the Constitution, especially for Albertans, is basically impossible. You need to clear 4 hurdles. If you want it to end like equalization, you have to do 4 hurdles. First, you have to have 7 out of 10 provinces representing more than 50% of the population in agreement. So that means you need to have Quebec or Ontario on your side, because they have 60% of the population between them. Then you need to pass a majority in the House of Commons. That's very unlikely. Then you gotta pass a majority in the Senate, which is basically impossible for us. And then the 4th hurdle is a real killer, because Quebec basically has a de facto veto vote. So there's no way for us to do the change that we want from within. So in the 1990s, we had the Reform Party, which was born out of Western frustration, and it called for Senate reform and decentralization, things that would require opening up the Constitution, which Ottawa just ignored. In 2001, we had the firewall letter. That was like Stephen Harper and Ted Morton and a few. And they demanded that Alberta be able to control our pensions, our policing, and our taxation. That was in 2001, sorry. Does that sound familiar? Because 25 years later, we're still having the exact same conversations, asking for the exact same things. In 2019, we had the Fair Deal panel, which we just had another panel go around, and guess what? Albertans asked for fairness, and Ottawa said, no. In 2021, we did have the equalization referendum, and in fact, 62% of Albertans voted in favor of ending equalization. So what happened? Ottawa just kind of laughed at us, knew that we couldn't get that done, and they carried on. So every single time that Alberta has tried to reform this federation, we've been blocked, mocked, or punished. So let's be clear, it's not that we haven't tried, we have tried for 120 years. We've tried all different kinds of things, and the answer has always been no. And that's why this moment matters more than anything we've ever faced before, because this isn't just another conversation. It's not just another panel or a report or an election promise. This is a real opportunity, and the first one we've been given in our lifetimes, to force the question, to put it directly in the hands of Albertans. So this phase right now really does matter. Sign the petition, have those conversations, and show up. And that brings me to my 5th question. What kind of Alberta do we want to leave behind for our children, for our grandchildren, for the people who will farm this land after us, for the businesses and families that will be raised here long after we're gone? Because we don't just wake up one day and we lose freedom. We wake up one day and realize we stopped protecting it. So what are we going to leave behind? An Alberta that is more dependent, or an Alberta that is more self-determined? And when we ask that question honestly, it brings us face to face with something deeper than policy or economics or politics. It brings us face to face with courage. And that's where this conversation really lives. And if there's one thing Albertans understand, it is courage. Because this province wasn't built by people who waited for everything to be certain. It was built by people who looked out at open land, long winters, insurmountable odds, and decided anyway, I think we can make a life here. It wasn't guaranteed, but they found that it was worth trying. Now, I know lots of people also feel that independence is overwhelming or that it feels scary, but here's what I've also come to believe. The certainty of where Canada is headed right now is far scarier than any uncertainty of forming a new nation. That's right, stop asking. And like Benoit talked about, I spoke with him at a different event a little while ago. He said the difference between Quebec and Alberta is largely a mindset. Quebec takes their sovereignty, they take that authority, they are sovereign, they believe that. I am sovereign, I'm a sovereign being. In Alberta, we're a little bit more apathetic and we ask permission for it. And is it okay for me to be sovereign? Can someone please say yes? So before we leave tonight, let me return just once to those 5 questions. Number 1, are we actually better off than we were a generation ago? Number 2, who should decide Alberta's future? How long can an unsustainable system last? What happens if we do nothing? And finally, what kind of Alberta do we want to pass on? You don't have to answer all those questions tonight, but one day soon, and actually October 19th, 2026, you will have to answer that. And when you do, I hope that you'll choose courage over complacency and hope over fear, and most importantly, self-determination over surrender. This province, like my farm, your businesses, our communities were built by people who believed they could, who had the courage. and we still can. So thank you so much for coming and listening to me engage. And I gotta put it in forever strong and free.
Tanya Clements, one more time, everybody. Our next speaker, Mr. Corey Morgan. He's an author, he's a storyteller, he's a journalist, and he's a truth teller. And he's got a surprise that's going to come out in another couple of weeks for everybody. I'm not supposed to tell you that. Like Corey, I'm not good with secrets. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Corey Morgan.
Hey, thanks, Daryl. I'm overdue to get here. It's nice talking on home turf. I've been putting a lot of miles on lately, but I've been doing it and loving it. It's been great getting around this province, seeing something that's been happening like I've never seen. As Daryl was kind enough to point out, when Chris introduces me at the events, he always likes to talk about how long I've been at this to remind everybody that I'm not quite a spring chicken anymore. But due to that, I have seen the cycles of our discontent, our getting upset, our getting worked up, and then it fades away again. And then we get stirred up and then it fades away again. Something totally different has happened this time. It isn't, not only hasn't we've gotten ourselves up and organized and moving on something, but it's not fading. In fact, it's growing. It's continuing to grow. It keeps me energized getting around to all these things. We are making history this year. There has never been a referendum for independence in Alberta in history. And there's going to be one this fall, by hook or by crook, one way or another, whether it's through the petitioning or it's whether the Premier realizing that this ball is rolling too far, too fast, it's too big, it has to be held. But it's up to us on whether we're making good history or bad. We've got a heck of a lot to do between now and then, and that's what I like to talk about. What we've seen, and this process that we've kind of almost stumbled into. We don't have a rule book we can follow. As Benoit pointed out, we got a lot in common with Quebec, and it's fantastic. And we really should be looking to the lessons that they've provided in being at this a lot longer than us. But we're still quite different. We don't have a party that's been organizing and building the base and getting this together for years and getting ready for a referendum. We've got this disparate bunch of groups, individuals, people getting together and pushing on this. And you know, APP, Stay Free, and other things have been doing fantastic work in getting people organized. And to be honest, as things were exploding last year in summer, spring, I was thrilled, but are we going to be able to pull this together and make something of it? And we have been. Yes. It's been amazing. I went out today. I had to go to Cochrane to get something, and there was a couple of fellows in the parking lot, Alberta flags, sitting there at a table. I see this just everywhere, good weather, bad weather. The dedication of individuals to get out. Of course, I had to go chat with them. I know I can't pass any of those stations without saying hi. And just meeting some fantastic people, putting in their time, getting out there. And they were a couple of thousands of people who have signed up on this movement right now. Thousands of volunteers. Like I said, we stumbled into a formula that helped train thousands and thousands of people for a campaign without a party. They've signed up and gotten involved in this petitioning. They've networked, they've discussed things, they've talked with their neighbors, they've talked with each other. They found out some things that work and some things that don't work, which is going to be really important because the campaign for real still hasn't even quite begun yet. But it's going to, and now it's got this amazing base that's already there.
Largest in Canada, I think.
I believe so. And we are engaged differently. There's a lot of things that have happened over these last few years. Of course, COVID. COVID woke a lot of people up. It made people realize, wow, government isn't benevolent. All those books written by people in dictatorships were true. We had it too good for too long, and we got kicked in the ass for it. But what it did was engage people. So I don't look at those times as good, but there was a benefit because so many people realized we can't wait for someone else to do things for us. We got to do it for ourselves. This government is not here for us unless we make it do what we want. And we saw that through different groups organizing and doing different things. I've been involved in politics for a long time. I haven't been a member of a party now for a long time, but I still comment. I've never seen things like an AGM at the UCP, for example, a year and some ago, 6,000 people coming to an annual general meeting for a political party. unheard of. 3,000 and some going to Edmonton. I mean, come on, getting thousands of people to go to Edmonton, that is dedication. So, and I want them to become independent with us too, but we'll still make fun of their little area. But we have a population that realizes that they have to take it upon themselves to become active. The average membership in a political party, you go to progressive conservatives, have been in power forever, and they'd be lucky to get 1,500, 2,000 people out to an AGM. Now it's commonplace to have these thousands. And what we're seeing now too with this petitioning, this thing is getting rolling. That's part of why this party, a lot of people question whether or not Premier Smith wants to allow a referendum to happen. Look, she's had plenty of opportunities to stop it in its tracks already. Lots of excuses. I play a political game. If I were in her shoes and I didn't want it to happen, I would have said it last fall. Geez, guys, I liked it, I tried, but the judge said it's non-constitutional, so I will stay with it. But instead, she put out Bill 14. Other aspects. Now, I'm not saying that she's necessarily supportive of yes vote. I have no idea. You want it up higher? Ah, there we go. That's a little louder. Let's hear it. Feedback. So, but she also realizes with this engaged membership, if there isn't a referendum this fall, all of these thousands and thousands of engaged people, these people who are ready for change, who want something to happen, are going to turn their energy on her. I don't want to see that happen. I like Smith, and I think she's for the most part doing a good job. But she's politically astute enough to know that you can't cork that bottle. That will just direct all the energy somewhere else. So even if she doesn't support a yes vote or not, I don't know. But she knows this referendum has to be held. So now we've got our work cut out for us. We've heard a lot of polls. We've heard ups, downs, all over the map. I've heard them, as low as 18%, as high as 42%. I'm just going to go anecdotally. I'm thinking maybe it's in the mid-30s, maybe even high. Maybe I'm low. When the numbers are that widespread, you can't really trust any of them. I'm still pretty confident, though, we're not well over the 50% yet. We're well on our way. We've got the momentum. Movements that have won and gotten positive votes have started with much smaller amounts than that and didn't have the thousands of volunteers moving along. So I'm optimistic. But we have a whole lot to do. We got to transfer now from the petitioning to the campaigning. And we got a bit of a danger zone coming up right away because the petitioning period is going to end. And how long it might be before a referendum is scheduled after that, maybe a month, a couple of months before it's actually set and scheduled. And we have a risk of falling into the doldrums, taking our foot off the gas. We don't have an activity now that gets us out there to sit on the side of the road at a pop-up station or go door to door with a petition form. So what I want to just remind everybody of tonight, I'm looking forward to Q&A because that's where we learn a lot. But is that we've got to keep campaigning all the way through. The campaign is ours, every single individual. When we try to change the hearts and minds, the people sitting on the fence, that big personal decision, and it's a big decision. And there's a huge amount of undecided people out there still. And the best way to move an undecided person, the most likely way to move an undecided person is to have a conversation with somebody they know, with a neighbor, with a coworker, with somebody at a sporting event, with the guy who sits next to them at the bar. It's our job, campaigning in between, looking for opportunities to keep moving that all the way through until a formal campaign gets rolling. We don't have to stop. There is nothing legislatively or anywhere else to say you can't go out and knock on your neighbor's doors and talk with them. You gotta do it with a bit of a plan, but you can do that. Get those flags out, get that passive campaign going, show that sea of blue building in Alberta. Make sure that this ball keeps rolling during that period where we don't have that clear activity of a petitioning campaign and an open campaign for a referendum yet. Because, we can't afford to take that breather. Momentum is everything. The establishment knows it, and they're terrified. And it's getting rough, and we're seeing that with some of the actions and the idiocy from some of the opponents. And unfortunately, we're going to see more of it. But that is a sign we're going in the right direction. So, I'll keep it brief tonight. I'll leave it at that, because again, I'm looking forward to the Q&A. But what we have to do is arm ourselves as the advocates, as the ambassadors for independence, as the campaigners. It's up to all of us to keep moving that needle. It's up to us to look for those opportunities, talk to that person who is undecided, and get them over to that yes side. And the other thing, I'll just leave with one final warning. When you're doing that, part of it is voter ID. When there's somebody you know who 100% opposes this and nothing is ever gonna move them, don't try. Talk about sports, talk about the weather. I'm just saying, you've only got so much energy. I know our instinct is there to fight, to dig our heels in, to argue, to debate. But even if we do fantastic and get 70% the yes vote, that means that 30% didn't. Don't spend half an hour fighting with a person you know is never gonna say yes, when you could have spent 10 minutes talking to 3 people who are sitting on a fence. So really think strategically as you have these conversations, as you move through your life during this campaign that's not a campaign period. Because this is still a very important time. We got 5-6 months. They're gonna go fast. And that day's gonna come. So as I said, we're making history. Let's make sure that history is a positive yes vote so we don't have to start this process all over again. We've got a real opportunity and I think we can do it. Thanks.
Corey Morgan, everybody. Interestingly enough, I'm taking notes. When this is over, I'm going to give you the Coles notes in about 35 seconds, okay? Except the next speaker is Chris Scott. I am not going to be able to get Chris's comments into 35 seconds. But we all know Chris's commitment to freedom. We all understand that he puts it on the line every day. We understand that his heart is always in the right place. Please join and welcome Chris Scott.
I think somebody's whistling at me. That's a first. Okay, well, yeah, thank you very much. It's a girdle. Well, thank you all for coming. This is awesome to see so many people here. Although, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is this room usually full when you guys have meetings? Yep. Usually quite full. You guys are pretty committed to this, right? Yeah. Is it because you just like Daryl? Well, we all love Daryl. But I think you're here for another reason. And Max, I think I'm a little too loud. I think you're here because you've realized something is wrong and you want to be part of a change. Is that correct? Yes. Well, don't get too excited and agree with me because now you have your work cut out for you. Has anybody in this room ever shared the gospel with people? Yes. Okay, lots of people. Has anyone in this room ever shared a business opportunity, like in an MLM or something? Lots. So you've heard this phrase, you can't say the right thing to the wrong person, and you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. Have you ever heard that? Do you understand what that means? This kind of goes along with what Corey was saying about don't waste your time with people who you just can't change their minds. That is actually more important than you realize because you know, those people that you have those very awkward conversations with that threaten your relationship, they're only one policy or one speech from Mark Carney away from coming to our side. Did you know that? There's probably lots of people in this room that a couple years ago would have said, no, we can fix everything and stay in Canada and just be sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, right? I was one of them. And at that time, if somebody had told you that they supported a referendum on independence and wanted Alberta to be their own nation, it would have been a very difficult conversation. They might not have changed their mind, but things happened between then and now. It wasn't what they said to you, it was the experiences that you went through, the things you learned, the things you watched, the things you heard our federal government say. The seeds were planted as to the solution, and then what you experienced caused those seeds to sprout and grow. And here we are today, still a lot of feedback there, Max. And here we are today, pushing for an independent Alberta. Now, the reason I'm telling you this, partially is because I never know what I'm going to say, so I'm just going off what Corey said. But more importantly, it's become very apparent to me over the last while that it's not going to be me or Corey or Tanya or Ben or any of the other speakers or Jeff or Mitch or Dennis Modry or anybody that builds an independent Alberta. It's you folks, right? What we experience every day is an onslaught of attacks and litigation and slander and libel. Did I say threats? Because those come too. Every single day. Even right now, the establishment, the status quo, the Federalists are trying everything they can do to attack the conversation, to stop us from speaking. They're dragging organizations into court. They're suing people. They're threatening people. They're paying podcasters and influencers to read from teleprompters, trying to convince people to not pursue independence. Did you know that?
Yep.
The attacks are absolutely relentless. And as we get farther and farther along this journey, some of the leaders that you see today are going to fall. It's going to happen. If you think that this is going to happen without collateral damage or a human cost, you got another thing coming. It is going to happen. And when that does, our collective response isn't, oh my goodness, we need to be fearful and back down. It's no. When one falls, we put 10 more in their place. And when one of them falls, we put another 100. That's how this works. And as you clap, you're agreeing with me that this becomes your journey and your mission. Yours. Every single Albertan that's concerned, it becomes your mission. That means that you have to learn, you have to prepare, you have to know how to receive criticism and turn it around and make your point with it. That's something that I've really enjoyed doing over the last few years, is taking objections to Alberta independence, mulling it over my head, regurgitating it in a different way that shows, yes, we must become an independent Alberta. It's a favorite of mine because there's no shortage of content. We don't have to sit there and make a list of things to talk about why we need to be independent. We just wait till somebody comes and talks to us and says, oh, Chris, we can never be independent because, you know, we just can't, because what are we going to do for currency? You know, and I said, okay, well, what are we going to do now? You don't like what's going on with our currency? You don't like that the $100 you have today is worth about $50 what it was 12 years ago? You don't like that? What are you going to do about it as an Albertan? Nothing. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you could possibly do to change that. Ah, Chris, you know, we can't be independent because this is my favorite one. Please laugh when you hear this. This is my favorite one. After that. Oh, Chris, you can't be independent because day one after that referendum, all flights are canceled. That's for you, Anthony. We hear these things all the time, and we need to equip ourselves so we can have the conversations. But if you have the conversation with the wrong person at the wrong time, wrong time. If it's the wrong time or the wrong person, the conversation doesn't go anywhere, and you threaten to destroy a relationship that you need, so when those seeds start to sprout, you can encourage them and help that grow and bring them on board with Alberta independence and make ambassadors for Alberta independence out of them. So when Corey says, don't waste your time on the wrong person, that is a very important thing. Focus on what you can accomplish now. Focus on those who are maybe on the fence and just need a little encouragement or need to cut through some of the fluff. I had a conversation with a fella in Edmonton, and it started off with, Chris, you mentioned gender ideology in the military. What is that all about? And this was a obvious person who was born male, who was very feminine. And so I was like, okay, well, I see where this is going. And I said, I want our military to focus on honor, defense. I want them to be properly equipped. I don't want them to be concerned with ideologies that have nothing to do with defending the country, defending the nation. And then the conversation went on, and I said, are you on board after what you've heard, because it was after a presentation, are you on board with Alberta independence? They said, no, absolutely not. And up until this point, the conversation was going great. Like very calm, respectful, polite. And then it went to this. Well, I would never support it because we're going to be so much in debt. And I said, why would we be in debt? Well, because the Alberta separatists, they got a $500 billion loan from the United States, and the day after the referendum, don't laugh, they really believe this, and lots do. The day after the referendum, we're going to be $500 billion in debt, we're never going to pay that off. And the conversation went 0 to 60, and I was like, whoa, where did this come from? I said, that's not a thing, that's not true. No, nobody has gotten that loan. Yes, I did, I heard it on CBC. But I know we laugh, but you got to remember, there's still a very large group of people in this province and in this country that believe those things. And we have to know how to talk to them. If I had just gone off and said, CBC is a bunch of bullshit, and anyone that believes them is ridiculously... Can't help myself. If I had gone off like that, the conversation would have gone off the rails. They would have never even thought about it, but we left on good terms because I planted some seeds, okay? And that person may never come over to our side. That doesn't matter. We have to try. This is not going to be won by people like me. It is very, very... There's a high likelihood that some sort of group, Elections Alberta or someone, is going to come after us for speaking our minds. I'm an average citizen funding this out of my own pocket and then recovering from you folks as you donate lots, thank you. Sharing my opinions in a public forum. I'm expressing my political opinions in a peaceful assembly, which is supposed to be a charter protected right. That's what I'm doing. That's what Let's Talk Alberta is about. www.letstalkalberta.com. Scroll down to donate. But they want to shut it down. Why would they want to shut down an average person talking about the future of the province if it wasn't a threat? Why is this idea of a referendum so repugnant to some that they have to lie, slander, threaten, attack websites, which happened to us, all those things to stop the conversation? Why wouldn't they just let it happen? If it's never going to happen, or it can't happen, or it's illegal, why wouldn't they allow the referendum to go on? Because they know it can happen. And they know it's likely. They know that the bullying tactics and the peer pressure that's used to shut down the independence conversation ends when those closet separatists walk into the ballot box. They know that. That person who is at work and won't talk about it because it's rude, or says, it'll never happen, and just sidesteps the conversation because they don't want to be attacked by their peers or looked down on or whatever, because the subject of sovereignty is so taboo. Us being able to influence the policy and legislation that we're governed under. I mean, how dare you talk about that? How dare you question the status quo? How dare you question that we send $30 billion east for which we get nothing back, have to run a $9 billion deficit, and our vets starve and freeze on the streets every year? How dare you? But when they walk into that booth, it's just them. There's no boss, there's no wife, there's no husband, there's nobody around. It's private. And there's a piece of paper in front of them, and there's two choices, yes or no. And all of the things that they learn over the next few months, possibly over the last few years, many years, like my aged friend Corey here, all of those things are in here, and the result is going to be a 1 mark on a yes or a no. And nobody will ever know. Nobody can cancel freeze their bank account. They can't fire them. They can't cancel them at work because it's private. And those folks are going to either make or break the result of our almost inevitable referendum. That means our job is critical. We cannot just stay home and not go to an event or go out and have the conversations. If we believe that this is what needs to happen, we have to get involved. This is a participation sport. It is not a couch sport. It is not sorry, I couldn't go and advocate for Alberta sovereignty because there was a hockey game on. Yeah. If you're still in the place where you're willing to threaten or sacrifice the future that your children will inherit from you so you can watch a hockey game, I've done a very, very poor job at trying to show you why you need to be involved. I don't think any of you in this room are like that, but there are some still. This is a really serious thing. And this is something that we're going to get to walk into after just spending some time and some words. and other people in other parts of the world have paid much, much higher prices. I said this at the last 10 meetings. This is the 250th anniversary of the greatest experiment in freedom the world has ever seen, the United States of America. They fought, and they bled, and they died for a half a decade, more than a half a decade. A bloody, gruesome war before anesthetics, before antibiotics. Like, imagine how gruesome and horrible this was. And they fought, and they fought, and they fought for the opportunity to do what we're doing. All we have to do is not be lazy and apathetic and get our asses off the couch and go talk about it. That's all we have to do. Other countries, there are other countries in this world that have fought for hundreds of years for the opportunity to self-govern, for the opportunity that we're blessed with, just like, almost like that. I mean, there's a lot of hard work that went into it, but nothing like what we've seen in history. So as you folks leave here, and as you go, you go on with your lives, keep that in mind. Think about the blessing you're about to receive, and that you get a choice. And ask yourself, what price are you willing to pay to advocate for your position? What price are you willing to pay to make sure that Alberta is the freest, most prosperous, amazing nation on earth? What price will you pay? And once you can answer that for yourself, share it with others. This is an initiative that requires duplication. It does. It's not going to happen just with us. Each one of you has to leave here and become a leader in your own regard. Even if it's only in a small group, invite people over to your house. Have 5 copies of Corey's book and Ben's book on your coffee table when your friends and your neighbors and your relatives come over. And use it as conversation starters. Be that change. That's what we're doing here. That's what Let's Talk Alberta is doing. We want to engage with Albertans, but we also want to build leaders that can duplicate this everywhere. We got a lot of work to do, but thank goodness we have a lot of Albertans that don't mind doing work. So thank you in advance for the hard work you're about to do. Now, I didn't tell Daryl this, but generally after this we have a little leg stretch because Corey talks so long. I know your legs are probably asleep. I don't know, I pick on you. So we usually have a break, 5-10 minutes. It usually turns in 15, and then we reconvene for the Q&A. So is that okay, Daryl? So yeah, that's what we'll do. So grab some refreshments, fill your coffees, and we'll see you back here in 10:15. Thank you very much.
So is this recording going to be available or what?
It's going to be live. It's a live stream, so it's live on YouTube.
Sorry?
Nice. There's going to be a break.
I just want to let you know, guys, we have currently 400 people watching on the live stream today.
There's lots more to do. We're down here like 6 times. I was
Guys, we're going to be continuing about 15 minutes from now. I zoomed in the camera so you cannot see the faces of the people because this is a private event.
He's as tall as he is.
Alright guys, thanks for the super chat. Oh man, I have to start this for you. Otherwise, you're going to get super chats. So we made it on live stream? Well, there's an intermission. It's an intermission. There's going to be more stuff. Right? It's just an intermission. Yes, yes. I just saw the camera so that you can see that.
Okay.
So is there any replay on the live stream?
Yes, yes. You'll be able to see everything. He's also live streaming. There's about 3 people doing that right now.
So what site is it going to be on?
It's going to be on YouTube.
Okay.
On YouTube, and I know that Chris Scott has put it on X. He's live streaming on X.
Okay, perfect.
He's also live streaming on YouTube and I think on X as well, and on Facebook. I can ask him where he's live streaming.
Awesome. You gotta get the message out.
Yeah. It's going to be a little bit more complicated because I wanted to make more videos, but they don't have to show people.
Oh, what happened to Ben? I gotta find Ben. I want him to sign his book.
Right, guys? There's going to be some more interesting question and answers going on next. Oh, am I vlogging the camera? It's all good for now. I'm here to adjust it. Okay, so that's gonna be my final destination for the camera. Yep. There we go. I don't want people to do like this. I want to go around and not give. I want people to do this. Oh yeah. I'm just gonna check a little something about it. I was thinking about
Alrighty, let's take our seats. Let's fill up those question cards. All right, everybody, let's find our way back to our seat. All of them.
Please do not go in front of the cameras. Please do not go in front of the cameras. Thank you.
Okay, here we go.
There we go.
Let's get those questions into me. So if you have a question on the white card, bring them up. Or hold it up, someone will come and grab it. Okay. And
Here we go. How are we doing back there? I gotta say, this is one of the most prestigious crowds I've seen in a long time. There are so many people in this room here today that are absolutely vital and essential. Sorry that I have my back to you guys, but pretend that I'm not. There's so many people in this room today that are essential to get us over the finish line in the long term. And there's 185 people here. There are 20 new people. There are 10 people who are friends. And out of the rest of you, there's canvassers, door knockers, funders, champions, campaigners. It's absolutely remarkable for me, because I know I've seen most everybody here at some point in time. It's pretty remarkable to me to see the unity amongst the room and the people that are here, even if you're new. So we have a little rule. Remember, I heard Chris talk about it. There's this issue of green lights, red lights, and amber lights. Okay? If you think of it like a stoplight traveling. We need to appeal to the yellow lights. There's one over here, a couple over here, if you guys want to find them. It's kind of like bobbing for apples. And in order to appeal to amber lights, we have to listen. You have to have the courage to actually listen. And if you watch our own politicians act, they say they're listening, but they're not. Okay, like pick one, it doesn't really matter which politician. I can pull their name out of a hat and we know they're not listening. So in order for us to win, the leaders, as Chris pointed out, are all in this room right here. This is why no one says who's the leader of the independence movement in Alberta. There is not one. There are thousands. And because there's thousands, we have protection. And we have protection that we can actually accomplish the goal that we have, because we can replace people, as Chris pointed out, because they will come after people. It's their nature. They don't know better. But they have a playbook, and it's predictable, and you need to realize that. Now, before I ask these questions, and there's lots of them, people ask me, what am I going to do for 2 months? Now, you all know that I ran for the UCP president, and I lost. I got 42% of the vote, which is okay, but we made a statement. But what I realize is the mechanism to independence is going to come from the elected party of the day. You have to get around that. You have to get over it. You have to pretend that you understand that. If you don't understand it, we can explain it to you one-on-one. But the road to independence comes through the elected party. Now, the next 2 months, while the whole thing is happening and they're counting ballots, I need you to do something for me. I need all 185 people that are here, I need you to sell memberships to the UCP. Now you say, why is that? Why the hell would I do that? I saw what Ernie, like they said over there. Because candidates will be nominated to be the UCP representatives in the next 5 months. These tasks of promoting independence and nominating the next UCP candidates for the upcoming election next fall are going to happen simultaneously. Why is that? Why would one thing get layered over the other thing? Because there's only so much time, right? Your currency is time. Time is what you're giving to this campaign, or money, one of the two. So, I need you to get involved. I need you to go to your constituency association. Actually, you don't even have to go there. I need you to find people that you know that will support independence, and I need you to sell them a UCP membership. Because then we can activate those people to elect independence-minded UCP candidates in the next election. Doesn't that sound like the way to do it? Because this will take a vote in the legislature. We talk about parliament, but before we get to parliament, we need to have a vote in the legislature to be independent. And what you don't know is that Alberta legislature could unilaterally declare independence if they had the moxie and the balls to do it. Now, if you elect the right UCP MLAs, ones that support independence, then we have people that are moving in the right direction. If you don't get involved and you think that someone's going to save you, you're lying to yourself. Keep telling yourself that if you sleep well at night, but you're just lying to yourself. So you need to sell as many UCP memberships to the people who you got to sign the petition as you can. As many. And it will make a difference. You need about 800 people in a CA to be able to choose the right candidate. You need 14,000 votes to get them elected to be a UCP member of the legislature. 800, 12,000. Pretty good odds. There's a guy right there. Stuart Jeans, he's running in Calgary Shaw right there. Here's our guy in Shaw. Or if you want to help him, come see him. Or Eric Bouchard in Calgary Law. You know, there's only 3 independence-minded MLAs in the entire legislature. 3. So we got some work to do in order to get the question to move in the legislature. Okay, that was my little call to action. Now, on to the questions. There's lots of them. Here we go. In no particular order. There are several groups talking to Albertans in favor of separation, but seem to have different visions for what Alberta will be. So, how do they all come together rather than fight ourselves? Tammy, why don't you take that?
I think it's actually great that there's lots of groups that are working on that because they're going to provide some more perspectives. And anything that's being proposed is just a proposal. So there will be some draft constitutions coming out, and they are proposed constitutions. What will ultimately happen is we'll have a constitutional conference after a successful yes vote on the referendum, where all Albertans will be able to weigh in, and we'll get to ratify what our new constitution looks like. So it will ultimately be the decision of Albertans, but in the meantime, when all these different groups are coming out with their proposed ideas, it's just getting our wheels thinking and getting our minds turning of what are all the possibilities of how amazing this could be, and which pieces do we want to take from all those to put into our final formalized constitution.
Thank you.
You're off.
Okay, next question. Are you concerned about a potential civil war, as has occurred throughout history when a group has made attempts to assert sovereignty from a larger collective? To the old guy.
Well, my memories of the American Civil War gave me some lessons out of this. Nothing's impossible. But we have something that's really rare and unique actually around the world, and we do have a peaceful mechanism to become independent through a democratic motion. I don't feel there's an appetite for a large part of Albertans to take up arms if they didn't get their way in the referendum, and I honestly don't feel there's a large appetite for non-Albertans or even Federalist Albertans to want to do so as well. I don't see the formula for a civil war brewing at this time. Nothing's impossible. The fact that we have this legislation is what keeps that from happening. The fact that we have the ability through the Clarity Act, even if maybe that's not what they intended to give it to us for, keeps that from building up. We might notice the FLQ disappeared. Part of that's because they moved their motions though into a political movement rather than a terrorist one. And as long as there's a legal, peaceful mechanism, I think most Canadians, Albertans, really aren't interested in taking that path. It's a concern, but I don't think I don't think there's a high chance of it happening at this point, unless some things change radically.
Chris, we have heard a lot of energy speeches and motivational talk, but where is the action plan? Where is the central coordinating organization?
And how can we integrate and have a consistent message and ensure that message is on track?
Well, the whole point is there isn't a centralized thing. This is not about a political movement or politicians, it's about individuals. Nobody controls me, nobody tells me what to speak, I tell you what my opinions are. And I feel like if I can advocate for my position and bring enough people with me, then we'll win, right? If you want to know where you can go and find information on how things could look, or some of the things that groups are advocating for, go to the Alberta Prosperity Project webpage. But they've been at this for years. There's a ton of information there. And again, it doesn't mean that that's exactly what it's going to be, but if you want to get some ideas and get thinking about what Alberta could be, that's where you go. I really think that the minute this becomes a centralized thing, that power centralization is the target, and that's a really bad idea.
We saw that in the convoy, where it boiled down to a few leaders. Those few leaders got attacked, and it took out the gas from the convoy. So the idea of decentralization, we've learned our lesson. So whoever asked that question, realize that those people that were involved in the Freedom Convoy, you can understand why Albertans are pro-convoy after hearing how many truckloads of 20s are leaving the province, right? But you have to realize that our defense is by having thousands of leaders, not a single leader. And if we have one person that you think is going to carry us over the finish line, then you need to get some help and listen to what we're saying and find, I don't mean help in psychological, although I see a few that might be helpful. And we do have psychologists in the crowd, so if you need that. But my point is that it's going to take the group. And I think, Chris, to the point of messaging, I think the messaging has been relatively consistent. Despite the fact that it comes from you or Jason Levine or it comes from Stay Free Alberta or it comes from others, there's been a consistent message of we need the vote in order to allow people to have an anonymous, private choice in the question. Would you not say that's consistent?
Yeah, I would. And one other thing I'll point out is the main overarching consistency here, no matter what individuals want for a new Alberta, is opportunity. That's what this is. It's an opportunity that we don't have right now. If you want to change things in Alberta, change the policy that we're governed under, you can't. We want the opportunity to do it, and we'll fight that out after the way political movements do, right? We have a platform, a position, we try and bring people with us, get elected, and then implement those laws. That's after. Right now, we want the opportunity.
This question's for Ben. Ben, you stated, perhaps implied, that Quebec is a strong economic powerhouse within Confederation with control of their pension plan, taxes, and embassies around the world. Why then can't Quebec balance their budget and continue to rely on transfer payments that mostly come from Alberta? Interesting question. I know you have an answer.
Well, first, Quebec balance their budget better than Alberta right now. Just a little comment there. The transfer comes from other system, other mechanism that Quebec do not control. No Quebecer in Quebec knows about transfers. No Quebecer in Quebec knows that they receive 13 billion from the rest of Canada. No Quebecer in Quebec speaks about that. It's a non-issue. And this is why they can be our best and better ally in a fight against Ottawa. Because it's a non-issue for them. They will help us despite losing that 13 billion, because sovereignty is more important than money. And I'm not implying that Quebec is a powerhouse. I'm implying that they know how to trick the system. And if we would just do the same thing, just the same thing, it will totally debalance the country. And my stance is that a castle is better demolished from inside than trying to throw bullet at it. So that's my stance, and it's for us to take right now. It's like if your dad leave the keys of the 65 Mustang on the table, And you're always complaining that it's the older brother that always take it. Well, just pick it up. It's for you to pick it up. No referendum, no thing. Everything can be decided in the legislature with a majority government. That, well, I believe we have, so that this is where I joined Daryl in the movement to take control of the party and do the change.
So I love the optimism in this question. Oh, this the question.
That was my question.
Okay. No, it was not your question, but you could have answered it. But it's a PG-13 crowd. When Alberta becomes independent, but someone from, let's say, people, you gotta read these like questions, not like a narrative, okay? When Alberta becomes independent, but someone from, let's say, Ontario wants to move to Alberta, what would be the minimum visa term for someone to earn Alberta citizenship and how many years? Okay, I want to answer this question. Sorry, you guys go ahead.
I want to hear your answer.
Okay. So, first of all, realize that independent Alberta, you end up with two citizenships, Alberta and Canada. So, controlling Canadian citizens to come to Alberta will be only the way that you have a social contract, which is to Ben's point. If you won't sign the social contract, you can't get the benefits of living in Alberta. You can live here. So for example, in Northeast Alberta, Northeast Calgary, the CA there has 83,000 people who live there and 23,000 voters. Whereas in Airdrie, Cochrane, there's 73,000 people live there and 53,000 voters. Okay, see how that works? Yeah. So the point is you need a social contract, and that social contract which unleashes your benefits but not your citizenship. And I think our Department of Immigration and Deportation will be busier sending people out than they will in. But don't worry about your house prices because lots of people want to move here. And as far as how long will it take you to be an Alberta, someone who is a citizen of Alberta, you know that you cannot become a citizen of Dubai unless you're born there, and you cannot become a citizen of the United Arab Emirates unless you are born there. You can come, you can have economic wealth, you can help support the country, but you cannot become a citizen. This is something of prestige and value, and we shouldn't be giving away like Skittles. All right, so now for the really tough questions. I've sorted through the easy ones. How will we defend ourselves if the United States decides they want our water, oil, and minerals? Who wants to take on this one for you?
What's stopping them now? It's a concern, but I mean, if the United States wanted to become expansionist, there's really nothing Canada or Alberta could do to stop it. The best thing to do is develop a good relationship with our neighbors, and we'll sell them the oil, and we benefit from it. And I'm sure they'd prefer that means as opposed to coming in and taking it as well. As for water, well, that's kind of a whole longer discussion, but logistically, there's not much of a big threat of them being able to take it if you really want to see what it takes to move large volumes of water. But either way, I know that's something that's put out by actually a lot of opponents. You know, oh, as soon as you become independent, the Americans are going to come in and take Alberta. I don't see what stopped them today.
Ben has a little supplemental.
Well, it's just like water-wise, we're not very rich in Alberta compared to down east. I mean, like Quebec has 2 million lake. Just a little anecdote. In 2006, when I was working with Harper, we were negotiating at the time because they would leave the dam of the Mississippi open a bit too much because they had a drought down south. So I'm telling you that on the water side, they will build the east way before checking the north side.
Okay, Tanya, this one's for you. Can the 5 questions you posed be made into posters? Yeah. Darlene, where's Darlene? Darlene and her crew wants to hand them out to everybody they know.
Well, thank you. That was very nice. I did do some reels of them, like on my Farm Geek page, which is weird. It's called Farm Geek because I'm a farmer and that was all farming videos, and now it's like this weird collaboration of farming videos and independence videos. So some of them are on there, but I've had a little bit of that feedback just after the speeches. So yeah, I will write them up and maybe I can post them on albertaprosperity.com and get them out anyways. Thank you for that.
Chris, how can we get the younger demographic to participate, not just in here, but in the process?
Well, the younger demographic is actively engaged, although you don't see it at these meetings because they're busy doing young people things. This is kind of an old person thing, no offense to the young folks in the crowd. But, you know, I've been at plenty of signing locations, and guess who's signing? Young people by the droves. They're not unaware of what's going on. They feel the pressure of the economy, and they see the future as slightly bleak. So they do, when it comes time to show up, they do it. But coming into something like this, probably not so much. So what we do, plant the seeds. That's all you gotta do. Plant the seeds and let Canada take its course. And when the referendum comes, if they're voting age, they will very likely be supporting the independent number.
So you're very active in advocating online with your podcast. What lessons can be learned from the style of advocacy that's happening for Palestine or for Israel during the wars?
The style of advocacy? If I had to say, like, okay, so what style is that? Being bold with your opinions, right? Wearing your opinion, those types of things. I think any movement requires that. If you're not bold enough to speak your mind and to wear your opinion with one of those really nice whistle stop branded Alberta Republic hats that are available in the corner over there from Love and Jessica, you know, if you can't put that much skin in the game, and it doesn't have to be my hat, anybody, then, you know, why should anybody follow you? Why should someone support that? We got to start being bold with our opinions and conversations.
It's really an issue of fear, right? I mean, what we're trying to help everyone with is how to manage their fear. Fear of being noticed, fear of standing out, fear of being wrong, fear that someone's going to criticize you. Maybe just a question to everybody. How do you handle the fear that comes from the public and the criticisms that you receive for the position that you have?
Well, very quickly, because I have the mic already, I'm way more fearful of what's going to happen if we don't do anything than what's going to happen to me for speaking out. I got over that long ago, and it's because I realized that I wasn't alone. You know, I found myself in a spot where I had to stand up for myself, thought I was going to get slaughtered by the government, had no idea if people were going to support me, and I very quickly realized that more people than not felt the exact same way as I do. And that changed my fear into motivation. So yeah, just that's it.
Because courage is contagious.
That's right.
Yeah. I think also it comes down to your approach too. So there's certain people that come at it with a lot of anger and hostility, and that puts people's backs up against the wall. But if you come at it with some grace, and everyone up here is fairly graceful in their presentations and just wanting to impart some education and have conversations, that goes a long way, and the attacks and the hate are more minimal, I think. And I don't have the same presence as these guys all do online, so they do get more attacks. The bigger you are, the more attacks you're gonna get. And then also when you go to talk to people, realizing that their hesitancy is usually coming from a place of fear themselves, because it is scary to go into the unknown and to be looking at change and creating a new nation. That's completely overwhelming and scary for people. So it is creating that space for civil discourse and giving them some grace too, to realize they're coming from a place of fear and they just want their fears relieved.
Well, one of the best things you can ever do in life, and it goes counterintuitive to human nature, is to stop giving a rat's flying whatever what people think of you. And as soon as you do that, it is so empowering. Then you can say what you want. You don't care about the hate mail that comes in, and God knows I get it. And you can brush it off. And it's not easy. You have to consciously actually do that. When you do put your name out in public and stick your neck out, you're gonna get the pushback. And if you're not accustomed to it, it hurts. People write some of the most horrific stuff, usually from some anonymous basement.
Yeah, so it's.
We get a lot of keyboard, you get a lot of keyboard warriors
Yeah.
that they're protected because they're anonymous. So do you have a style that would help people who have a very active Facebook presence? Because many people here have very large Facebook followings. Do you have a style that you use to compartmentalize that?
I disengage. We have the tools in social media, and I know some people get, they don't agree with it. If someone is being belligerent, I block them. I block their email, I block them on X, I block them on Facebook. I don't have the energy or time to deal with those assholes. So, as I said though, it's counterintuitive, especially for Albertans. We want to push back, we want to fight back, but they're trying to pull you in. And that will give you anxiety if you start taking it personally. So that's one of the ways to deal with fear. The other thing, if you're just putting your neck out, the other fear is just natural fear, getting in front of people, criticism, critique, so on, is just having a plan. Always having a plan, knowing where you want to go. It's like with anything in life, your anxiety will be reduced if you have a checklist of where you're going. So if you have the problematic person or if you're putting the thing out there, just if you know where your response is going to be, you will lose a great deal of fear from that. But it's up to us not to be pushed around, and we're going to have to consciously do it because, yeah, they're going to try and scare us. And it's not an unreasonable fear, but we can beat it.
Well, I believe it's important that you speak out of conviction. You don't have to speak of the whole plethora of stuff. Have a conviction on one subject that you hear, that you're well aware, and just speak about this one alone. You don't need to cover the entire subject. And then to steal from what Chris usually says at these events, no, if truly you live in a country when you are fearful to express yourself for repercussion, that alone is the right reason to speak out.
So we can thank Bill C9 for creating more fear amongst everybody that they're going to get blocked. Ben, you still have the microphone, so here's a question for you. How can we convince Quebecers to spread the word and help Alberta's separation? And can they be convinced to give up equalization payments?
Okay, well, that's a good question. So two things. Equalization payment, nobody can change it. Trudeau put it in the Constitution 1982. So forget that. Even the referendum at 62% for Alberta, that's BS. That was like lipstick on a pig. That has no effect. Okay, nobody can do because it's in the Constitution. Secondly, to ask Quebec to help us, they will run to help us anytime because they do not care about the money. And that's the problem with our reason to start that. Most of the reason I hear is economic. Well, separation goes beyond that. Separation is from the heart. So as long as we don't have other reason than that, I don't give a lot of hope for it. But if we push other reason than economics reason, Quebec will support us like all-heartedly. And they are very interested in what's happening in Canada. I have the leader of the party that we started in '94 is now the star in Quebec news. And you have to understand that in Quebec, 58% of the population don't speak a single word of English. They don't speak English, they don't read English, they don't know anything about English. Foreign country, Toronto is a foreign country. No, they don't go there. 58%. So the media is very, very well controlled. So like we laugh at CBC, but an anchor in Quebec, that Mario Dumont Quebec, has 1.1 million people listening to him all the time. And I was already on this show. So speaking about Alberta sovereignty, and they are very interested, and yes, they will get a lot of support for Quebec. If it's to pass over Ottawa, anytime.
Here's an interesting question about the money and about federal regulation. So I don't know who can answer this question. RSPs, what do we say to people when they ask if their investments will be safe, especially RSPs, as they are federal government tax deferrals? Can anyone answer that question?
Well, I believe there's the soundness of the economic of the investment. Know what? If you put in the RSP in French, RSP, there's two R. But if you put money in the RSP, by the investment contract itself, it needs to be honored. So and then the feds might give you a delay to get your money out because you're not part of Canada anymore, but they cannot just pull the plug on it. They can't.
It's a little like CPP. It is Alberta's money. We just have to say it's Alberta's money, and it triggers the fact that it's Alberta's money. The fact that we pretend that it's not our money, in and of itself, leads credence to Mark Carney putting it on the balance sheet and leveraging it for the debt. Corey.
Right.
Well, I just wanted to point out, as was mentioned in the question, part of it is a deferred tax that's owed to the federal government. That's one of the things, of many things, it's true, and I don't know if the value of freedom covers it, but it's a lot of those economic things we gotta cover in the negotiation period, because it's a credit on the federal government's books, and we have to determine that. But there's a great deal of things that they owe Alberta and Albertans as well. But we would have to have those discussions, because it is, I hate to say it, a debt owed from somebody to the federal government at that time.
Can I add something to that? I just want to add something quickly on the topic of investments. Have you ever heard the phrase prior preparation prevents poor performance? If you are an investor, it is your job, your duty, your fiduciary duty, to look ahead and determine what risk appetite you have, right? And by the way, this is not financial advice, I'm just telling you my opinion. If I had a bunch of investments, paper investments, which I don't, because I don't have any, I would be looking at the prospect of an independent Alberta and what impact that would have on the Canadian economy, and what impact that would have on the Canadian dollar, and what impact that would have on Canadian dollar investments. And I would be preparing for the future to protect my wealth from what I determined would be the most plausible outcome of Alberta leaving. So personally, I don't have paper anything. I don't even have paper cash in my wallet. I try to, but I don't. I have metal, not in my house, it's elsewhere.
But the lead is in your house.
Yes, there is penicillin in my house. But my point is, anytime someone asks me about anything to do with finances, first thing I say is don't take my advice, because I'm horrible with finances. Second piece of advice is plan ahead. Talk to somebody who knows and plan for that outcome, because I personally would not want to be left holding a huge sum of Canadian dollar investments after the Canadian dollar takes the inevitable plunge that it will when Alberta is gone.
He's not giving investment advice, he's just giving his opinion. I want to just stress that for everyone who's watching the stream. And also to his point, there are firms in Alberta who deal in Alberta, and there are banks and financial institutions who are from Alberta, not from Toronto, and you need to sort out where they are, like Bow Valley Credit Union, places like that, where it is under Alberta legislation, not about federal legislation. And again, I am not giving you financial advice, just use your common sense. Okay, what steps can Stay Free Alberta do? I guess this would be not specifically Stay Free Alberta, but any independence-minded organization do to ensure Elections Alberta does not play around with the petition results?
That question is a little bit out of our wheelhouse, because this is not a Stay Free Alberta event. Let's Talk Alberta has zero ties to Stay Free. We don't advocate for or against them. We don't host them, nothing. However, if the question is simply about what can we do as individuals to make sure those that want things to stay the same can't do funny business, get involved. If you're worried that they're going to do something and be untoward with the way that things are counted, be one of the people that count. Be a scrutineer. Make it too big to rig.
Too big to rig is the key. What happens if Carney uses the Emergencies Act to stop separation or independence, and what else might he do to stop us?
Okay, we may as well clear this one up. Carney never said he's gonna use the Emergencies Act to stop independence. I wouldn't put anything beyond him, I'm not here to defend him, but we gotta stay on facts.
And that was not correct. That was a spliced audio.
Yes, there was spliced audio. Somebody, even after the questions started getting asked, somebody did a terrible splicing job, which made it look even uglier, trying to make it look like he had said that. And he was talking about something in a totally different context. So the broader question, though, is what would the federal government do in light of a positive vote in a referendum? The Emergencies Act, I don't even think would be the best tool for them to try and stop it at that point. I think, again, it would mostly be judicial and other aspects and roadblocks they'd throw up, because the Emergencies Act just isn't a good tool for that. But we should, it's just a note for all of us. We've got to be really careful with our sources online and what we see, because as we know, rumors can travel like wildfire, and it hurts the credibility of us when we start sharing them perhaps before double checking them, that's all. And you know, we're not faulted for not trusting Carney, we shouldn't, but that one unfortunately just wasn't true.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Just really quickly, what does that say about Canada and that Canadians would actually believe their government would do that? Does that tell you that people are confident in Canada? No.
Correct. So online, the stream has a question. This comes from the Unacceptable Fringe, Derek Smith. He's in the chat helping Max. What are they going to do when what are they going to do? I think what will the Federalists do when independence runs wild? What do you think the reaction is going to be when independence proves to be 60% of the vote?
Depends. Because they're going to be crapping their pants.
All right. I think that quote's going to work on your podcast there, Dale. What's going to happen to the Canadian currency with an independent Alberta? Who wants to answer that?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball. However, I wrote a blog, I did a little research on GDP. And the research was done because someone said, oh, Alberta, you're only 15% of Canada's GDP, you don't really matter. Okay, well then it doesn't matter if we leave, right? So I did a little digging, and I found out Ontario, this is off the top of my head, and I have a bad memory, I'll do my best. Ontario's GDP is about 35%, I think, something like that, of Canada's total GDP. Alberta's is 15. It sounds like they're way more productive than us, right? Wrong. 1 in 4 Canadians works for bureaucracy or some type of government, not creating new value. Ontario, 88% of their total GDP is made up of real estate, finance, leasing, bureaucracy, and politicians and government.
Wow.
So white collar then.
White collar things. Now this is not new value creation. There is a very big distinction here. Alberta, we're 15%. We're upwards of 80% new value creation. We extract resources, we build things, we trade things on the market, we sell things. It's new money that we create by doing work. Money that supports that parasitic draw of, you know, the 80% of Ontario. That means that when Alberta leaves, we're punching way above our weight class. The amount of real money, newly created value that leaves the economy is a lot. And I'm not going to get into numbers, but I would guess that it will have a considerable, measurable, and feelable impact on the Canadian dollar.
Tanya, whether we get 400 or 400,000 signatures, does the number legally have to be announced? And if the Forever Canada crowd thinks we only have 177,000, they might stay home on October 19th and not come out to vote.
That's true. There's some different scenarios of how it could play out. I don't think legally that we have to announce the number. I'm pretty sure the number will come out, but I don't know if it's a legal requirement that it does. No matter what number is announced, though, there's going to be a tax on it. And we have to remember and be okay that our system for collecting was different than what the previous petition was. It was during winter. We can make up like lots of reasons for why. You know, we had to do the ID, and lots of times for collecting from rural that made it equivalent to 2 pieces of ID that had to be produced. So it was a little bit more difficult as well, but it doesn't really matter. There's a cancel culture out there. People are scared to sign the petition, but very motivated to sign the referendum. So whatever, there's gonna be enough numbers, we're gonna be able to force the referendum. The referendum's gonna happen, but the big part is making sure that people come out to vote on referendum day, especially the ones that are in favor of independence.
Right, and so really we're voting on the referendum when it's established, not on the petition, just to be clear. But technically, all we need is 178,000 signatures verified. And remember, Forever Canada, they were able to collect their signatures on napkins, chip bags, and on the backs of Kotex boxes. Like it didn't really matter where they got their signatures. Whereas this process has been very, very formal and risky to the person handing over their ID.
And I know that all of the 400,000 that Forever Canadian claimed they had on their petition won't be coming out to vote. Alberta does not allow cats, dogs, people from BC, non-citizens, or imaginary people to vote. They don't. So there's going to be probably close to 200,000 of those 400,000 that can't vote.
Okay. I like that. Ben, 1 in 4 people in the country work for the federal government, which is kind of pseudo-answered here before, or in a federal subsidized industry. How do you plan to resolve this inevitable math problem while still in confederation when the distribution of votes is so vastly inequitable for Alberta?
Well, it's not a question of vote, it's a question of constitution. So the constitution give us some right that we have the right to take without otherwise having to say anything. And we just have to take example of the Liberal government in 1993 with Paul Martin, who did a super job as Minister of Finance by firing 250,000 federal workers from 1992 to 1995. So we know it's possible. The Liberals showed us that it's possible to do that. And secondly, Quebec, what Quebec does, by the way, when you live in Quebec, you do your provincial tax, federal tax. They monitor every penny that goes to federal tax, and then they have about 600 bureaucrats on the other side of the river. The only thing they do all year long, these 600 bureaucrats, is go and bog the federal bureaucrats on the other side of the river to make sure that they get every penny they pay back in services. And if they don't get the services, or if they can offer services for a better price, they tell the government, give us back our money. So Quebec get 100% of the money they give to Ottawa, get it back in services. 100%, and they make sure that it happens by having staff on the ground to check it out. And again, it's constitutional. We can do the same.
So, interesting question, and maybe everyone can kind of look at this question. How do I answer the question to a person who wants to be a sovereign Albertan within a united Canada?
It's the system, stupid. I mean, I'm just kidding. You should be more polite than that, because it's a valid question. But it's a system. This is, how long have we got to hit our heads against the wall? How many times have we got to go through this cycle? How many reform parties? How many Canadian Reform Alliance parties? How many federal efforts? And Stephen Harper, I like him, great Albertan, great Canadian, wrote the Alberta Agenda 26 years ago, got a majority government. How much of it did he help implement of that? Zero. Because he can't. Because he would be out of there in minutes, because the system forces the federal politicians to cater to the center. So if people are willing to stay as a sub-powered province in the system of this country, with a Senate representation that can't be changed without the Constitution changing, the equalization that can't change without the Constitution changing, and even vote distribution by population not working properly, I don't know how I can answer them for that, because that we'll stay within a united Canada and we'll continue to be screwed. I won't accept that.
So there's actually an interesting resource for everybody on this exact topic. If you go to encouragetolisten.com and you go to that website, you will see a presentation that includes work from Ben, from the Value of Freedom as well, from APP, and you will hear 8 speakers talk on challenging this question. So the question at the Encourage to Listen was, how do we build a framework for a sovereign Alberta within United Canada? That was the question. And we went out to explore this idea of how to do it. And at the end of the day, we came up with a framework that showed people what that would look like. And at the end of the day, it didn't always look like Alberta within Canada, because Alberta has to decide to be an adult. And once you're an adult, and if you work within the Constitution, you quickly realize that you are not set up in Alberta to do what Quebec does, because we don't have that culture of whining? No. Ability to be consistently and politely belligerent. No, that's not right either. Assertive enough to say no. And in Alberta, what happens, if we were doing this now, like we could do this now. This is now. And we don't do it. And the reason is we don't want to do it. The government does not want to do it, which is why I need you to get out there and sell UCP memberships, FYI. Okay, next question. Okay, hang on. We've answered that question a bunch of times on leaders. Carney will likely not recognize our vote to secede, to become an independent nation. What can we do to protect our democratic votes to succeed? Ooh, I like this.
We are not asking. This is what people aren't getting. Like, I hear people talking about, what if the federal government does this? What if they take us to court? What if they do that? I'm sorry, but I'm not asking. As an independence-minded Albertan, I reject the idea that the Canadian Constitution should govern us wholeheartedly. I don't care what it says. I don't care that they say, I don't care anything in there. What I want is Albertans to do that for themselves from a position of strength, by us, for us, not somebody else in Europe, in Britain, writing a piece of legislation and imposing a system of governance on us. I reject that, and I'm not asking. That's what Alberta sovereignty means.
And we're really, what we're saying is what Quebec is doing, is we will govern for the benefit of the party of independence that is being elected ultimately to lead the province.
Yes, and this is, I agree with Ben on all of his points, but I take it a little bit further. Even Quebec, taking all of the sovereignty they can within the current structure, is missing something major. That constitution was not designed for them. It was designed by government to keep them in check. Our constitution does not allow us free speech. It's not in there. Our constitution does not allow us to have any type of organization that protects our rights. And that's what I want. And that's, actually, I want that for Quebec too.
Or property. It doesn't protect property. I love this question. Why do we have to abide by Elections Alberta regulations? We know they're going to change the rules for those in power. How do we make it too big to rig?
Well, first of all, I want to point out Elections Alberta is a figment of the provincial legislature's imagination, for starters. They exist to govern by the Elections Act, right? So whatever they do has to reflect what the Act says. And if there's something in the Act that isn't supporting the spirit of what the people wanted in the legislation, it becomes the legislator's job to change that legislation, just like what they did with Bill 14.
Okay. How soon can we leave Canada, Tanya?
How soon can we leave it?
Can we leave?
I don't know, I've listened to Keith Wilson talk about this, and if you haven't watched some of Keith Wilson's stuff, he puts out amazing things and delivers it in a very calm way, so it's great to share with people in the city as well. He proposes that we can actually get this done quite a bit faster, and I trust his level of confidence and his skill set of what he's been working on in the past. He said lots of like the acquisitions and mergers and things that he's worked on before are actually more complex than Alberta negotiating its way out of the country of Canada. He thinks those negotiations are actually like pretty straightforward, and we can have our plan in place that, okay, this is kind of our balance sheet, this is Canada's balance sheet, who owes who what infrastructure do we need to buy from them and purchase that to maintain what we've already have in place here. we're not really recreating anything, we're not creating a new wheel. We're gonna keep what we have right now, and then we can fix parts of it after we leave. So I think that it could actually be done in 2027, we can be a new nation.
You know what's interesting when you say that? If you really use some critical thought and you think about government structure and you look at the ministries that exist, we only need 5 more areas of responsibility in order to be a sovereign country. We need Veterans Affairs, we need border security and military, we need technically currency and treasury in a technical kind of way, and we need a more robust style of immigration. Actually, there's 4. So, oh yeah, and you need the idea of foreign affairs. And we have a very small trade kind of thing we do in Alberta, but it needs to be robust. So it's not, when everyone tells you it's impossible to do, there's so much to do, they're wrong. We don't have to employ all those federal people. We don't need to really employ a lot of more government people to get the job done. They just need the white papers and the direction to do their job. That's what they need. So that's me answering the question.
But the airports.
Okay, we're getting down to the last couple questions here. I'm saving possibly the most interesting question for last. So here's the second last question. Although Canadians are well conditioned to CBC propaganda by COVID, why do we permit CBC journalists equal access when it has eliminated public input on all its content and misinformation? Can you legally answer that question, Corey?
I don't care if it's legal or not. Legally, I'm not sure. Now, I'm not sure which access we're talking about, I guess, to independence events or things such as that.
I think they cut off their comment. I think they cut off their comments on CBC, so people can't really respond to the government
engage
broadcast.
CBC. I mean, we're stuck with the state bloody broadcaster. We're going to spend $1.5 billion for that thing until we get out. The good news is actually, I know in Quebec it has a huge viewer share. In Alberta, only 3.5% share of the news is CBC. So people aren't watching it here. I don't know, I'm not comfortable with cutting off certain outlets. Anyway, speaking out of self-interest, but I work for the Western Standard. I say any courageous movement shouldn't be afraid, though, even if it's a state broadcaster, to allow them in to cover the events. If your movement is strong, don't worry. Their bad coverage won't derail you. Free press is more important than starting to cherry pick which outlets you think should come in and which don't, because that's what we're already seeing in Ottawa, and it's not a good trend.
We saw that with an injection of truth. When we did an injection of truth, everybody trashed the event. It sold out worldwide, 3.5 million viewers. Like, it was insane how well CBC did for marketing our product. So you're right, it has a lot to do with what we're doing and why we're doing it and the heart that we come from. Okay, so here's the final question, which I'll let you all answer this. What would happen if at the right moment Danielle Smith crossed the floor to become an MLA for an independent Alberta? Oh, that's not what this question is. Okay. Still a good question. What would happen at the right time or at that time if Danielle Smith crossed the floor to become part of the federal, to run for Pierre Poilievre's job federally, sorry. It was kind of cryptic. I like my first question better. What would happen if at the right time Danielle Smith crossed the floor and became leader of the Independence Party in the legislature? Let's ask that one. I know, I couldn't understand the rest of it. Okay, so what would happen if at the right time Danielle Smith crossed the floor to become MLA? Oh, to be an MP. Sorry, to be an MP in Carney's camp in order to create chaos at the time we are separating.
Well, she's an MLA. So she would have to leave her seat, find a federal seat, run for it and win it. And assuming she ran under the Conservatives, then she crossed the floor. So the mechanism isn't there. And I know I was on the Wild Rose board when Daniel crossed. I said she'd never do that, and I was pretty freaking wrong. But it's an unlikely scenario. I know some people have mistrust, and they think she's going to rug pull the movement at the last minute. I don't know. Again, we keep kind of circling back to the same thing. Make it too big to rig. I've said this before, and I'll say this is the last question in closing. If you listen to a lot of Danielle, she loves Ralph Klein. And Ralph Klein always used to say the same thing. I don't make the parade, I find it, and I get in front of it. And if 60% of Albertans voted yes in a referendum, rest assured she will brush by you so fast to get in front of that, and you won't have to worry about it.
There are ways too that the Premier, Daniel Smith, can actually save the movement if it came down to some litigation or the federal government interfering. So anyone that's going out there and seeking to make an enemy of our Premier and our current government, I think is doing a great disservice to our independence movement.
Sorry. I agree with you wholeheartedly. This is why I say that our movement requires us to work with the government of the day. And I think it's clear for the independence movement that the government of the day needs to be the UCP, given where NG's taking the NDP. Okay, like you just got to look at the landscape. Okay, so realize the value of the political party process. It doesn't go away if we get a successful yes vote. It is the beginning of maybe phase 3 of 10 of the process that we require. So working with, in a cooperative way, as many people as possible is essential to get us to the finish line, as opposed to being adversarial.
At the same time, we need her permission.
Sorry, and I would just add, at the same time, I know we don't need her permission either. This is something done by Albertans, but seeking to make enemies in the movement doesn't help.
Yeah, in a way, this is us giving our government permission to advocate for this on our behalf, right? It's not the other way around.
Well, and I believe that she already messed the pot with the 9 other questions, so she clearly set up, rigged up to mess up with the process. So no, she already done her job, so I don't think that she will move from there.
I think of it a little bit differently than that. So there's 9 questions there. When I look at all of those 9 questions, they're all yeses. And if you think about trying to sell somebody on an idea, you engage them to get them to say yes. The more times you say yes, the more you're committed to saying yes. So the first 4, clear to yeses. The next 5, clear to yeses. If this is the 10th question at the bottom of the ballot or on the 10th ballot, you're just, at that point, you've got like checkmark fatigue. Like we're gonna get like 25% just from yeses being, oh my God, I gotta hit yes because I keep going on a roll here. What would really work, no, I'm not gonna go there, but it's very, very positive. All right, so just before we close, please give everyone a big round of applause. I'm going to encapsulate what they said. I wrote it all down on one card. Get involved. If you're not involved, you're not part of the solution. And that you yourself have to have the courage to listen to those that are the yellow lights. If you do nothing else, if you've learned nothing today, stay away from red light conversations. Do not engage them, release them, respect them, but do not waste any energy. Find strength amongst those that are green lights, like tonight perhaps, and realize that Alberta is real. Alberta is a real place with a real culture, and that you have a great opportunity to make history. This is essential. And remember that Canada itself is an illusion, and that by actually having an independent Alberta, you will be saving the rest of Canada for itself, because they will have to define their own way in a new world.
Yes.
So with that, thank you so much. Be involved. Thank you to all our guests. Drive safe. Oh, and this Saturday, come for Rib Fest. Here in the market, we have 40 different types of ribs. So it starts at 11 o'clock.
Guys, thank you so much for joining the live stream.
I'd like to also point out that we have a business stream about 200 people. On my stream